Desmond, thanks for being here.
Man, pleasure to be here, John. I'm excited, man. Looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome. So I've known you for about, I think, a year and a half now. I've noticed lately a lot of buzz around town about your product and your company. Can you tell the listeners what BatteryXchange is?
Yeah, definitely. So we're a rental platform connecting people, businesses, and communities to things and people that matter to them most. And so we actually have a product, right, to make it easy. It's like the scooters or the bike sharing community that you see around your communities. And what we've done is we built a platform where individuals could rent on-demand portable batteries to charge your cell phone. So you can live life charged, and then a way and a platform for businesses to interact and engage through our digital screens on our kiosk machine.
That's really interesting. When you think about the problem, I've been out where I start to lose power, and if you think about when I'm visiting, or back when we used to visit places, if I'm in San Francisco or I'm in London or I'm in any city where I don't necessarily know my way around and know people, I rely on my phone to get in touch with anybody, for Uber, for literally anything. And so I can imagine the the pain you feel and the anxiety that you feel when you're losing power. So I definitely could see that being a big hit. Do you look for events or things where people are going to be there for a long period of time, or do you think it'll work even for somebody who's stopping by for a quick coffee and just needs a 20-minute recharge?
Yeah, and I think that's the cool part about our business. Like, we did start in the event space because we said individuals were there for several hours, staying connected, like you mentioned, and needing a convenient charging solution, because you do have solutions. Like, you got your outlets, got your locker boxes, but they disconnected individuals from their phones. When
I can't tell you how many times I've left my phone with the bartender and been like, I got to remember to check it.
Exactly. But no, we do have a solution that's also adaptable for, small businesses, large establishments. I can't wait for concerts and stadiums and arenas to open back up, but bars, restaurants, coffee shops, like you mentioned. Literally, there's the cool part about it is we have various models. So we have a really tall model that I think you've seen, the tall Apollo model, and everything is Greek gods, right? So we got Apollo, Hercules, Iris, Zeus, the works. And so we have our Zeus model that's a little bit smaller, could fit on the top of like a countertop and stuff. So that's great. And they all have digital screens. And so, the cool part of it is businesses can share content, information, videos with their customers, specials, deals, but also third-party advertisers can come in, small businesses, individuals with services. That's what we're seeing even in this like COVID environment. Like, small businesses are looking at like innovative ways to like get out in front of individuals. And so they're utilizing our screens to share the message, share their business, share their service with, our user base.
So I'm hearing a lot of different potential revenue models. Where do you guys think the revenue will come? And I understand that you're already driving revenue because it's deployed and I've seen it in businesses, but where do you think is going to be the mix of revenue?
Yeah, the biggest thing for us is the B2B play. So businesses pretty much pay a subscription based on the kiosk machine model that they have on a monthly basis, and then they get access to pushing content on the screens, and then we manage the hardware and just make sure everything's according to plan, on an everyday basis, and we do that remotely. But there is the advertisement side as well, and then we do plan on getting into the end user side as well, to potentially charge them on a subscription tier. Whether it's like them getting access to different promotions or specials, or them being able to reserve a battery. Like, you think about, you're going to like a big Panthers game. We'll keep it local, Panthers or like Hornets, and it's just like a bunch of people there, a bunch of people charging. But if you have like a premium subscription, you'll be able to reserve it, and just like how cool would that be? Different things like that. So
yeah, that would be cool too, because I'm a maniac. When I go see my Washington football team play, my friends literally are waiting at the gate at 10 a.m. for a 4 p.m. game, and we're tailgating the whole day. Yeah, and that's one of the things I always have to think about is like, do I bring a battery? It'd be cool to have a solution where you can come out through the parking lot and, hey, give me your, here's a battery. You're a premium member. You got it for the day.
Yeah, and honestly, we just want to change the entire landscape of charging now. Like, now you have to think about having a battery with you, or you have to think about, if I get to 20%, what do I do, right? Yeah. We like, that's my new thing that I'm starting, because these other sharing economies are all about like the last mile, right? For us, it's like that last 20%, because people have to now make a decision. Do I send out the text or send the email or whatever it is.
Make the Instagram post.
Exactly, whatever. Or do I go without? Do I run it till it's dead, till it's 3%? Or and there's all these decisions that people have to make that could be, on a socially side, not so bad, but there's like safety and security that ties us to our mobile device, and we just don't want anybody to run into any convenience or inconvenience, sorry. And so that's what we're kind of creating and kind of changing.
So you mentioned 5 or 6 different models, all the Greek gods and maybe a goddess. What is the typical number of batteries that you're supplying in one of these kiosks?
So our Apollo is 48 batteries, and it has a 43-inch digital screen. And then our second tallest or largest machine is Hercules. It has 24 portable batteries and then 24-inch digital screen. And then our smaller one, Zeus, and then the smallest is Iris. And so, and just to kind of tell you where that came from, but I've always been big in Greek gods and just Olympics and different things like that. But a few years back, I read Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. And
that's one of my favorite books. I haven't recommended that in a long time, but that's one of the best startup books for my money.
Yeah, I agree. And what's cool is, and we'll talk about my international experience, some of the things that he did and went abroad and did all those things, I did it. Mm-hmm. So I just really connected with him as a founder. And then his love for Greek gods, I started looking into. I was like, that'd be cool. We need some names for our kiosk anyway. So that's how it kind of came about.
I like it. I think the naming scheme for all sorts of things is always interesting. I come from an application development world. And so whenever we would set up an environment for a client, we would set up a bunch of different servers, and it was always fun naming the servers. Yeah. We'd pick names of Transformers, the toys, or things like that. I think Greek mythology is as good of a naming scheme as you're going to find. So you talked a little bit about it. What were you doing prior to starting BatteryXchange?
Yeah, so I'm a graduate of Winston-Salem State. I started my career with Pepsi. Did that stint for a while. While I was doing that, I started 2 companies, and actually got to the point to where I wanted to, be full time in this game, because I felt like in order to take a company to that next level, you gotta be fully invested, right?
Dude, what were the first 2 companies, if you don't mind?
One was a logistics company. We were pretty much helping so my family's from Jamaica, and my aunt is in the oil industry, and she just had a very inefficient way of running the business. So we pretty much built a platform to kind of make that efficient. And then the next was a fintech application. So similar to it was just a way for individuals to round up money on a day-to-day basis into an investment fund, pretty much. And so we were trying to do that in the Caribbean market. Okay. And then honestly just got to the point to where I wanted to travel and see the world. And then something that I always wanted to do was get an MBA, because I felt like going to this next stage of entrepreneurship, that's just something that helps. It looks really good, and I could learn a lot and build a network. And so I started looking at opportunities locally and found a school that had a partnership with a school in China. And so my most recent stint experience-wise was studying abroad, doing my MBA there. And then I started working for a firm there where I helped a lot of later stage technology companies kind of make that transition to Asia. So I got a lot of access to manufacturing, deep technology, and just capital raising, that whole ecosystem. So
it sounds like your background there was in largely logistics. I'm guessing with Pepsi, they have huge logistical challenges, and then you have a startup where you're tackling that problem. And then it sounds like you were able to leverage that when you're in China as well. That's awesome. Were you doing anything with Asian supply chains prior to the MBA experience and the job that you got afterwards? Or
so the job I got was BatteryXchange. So but I started to get a lot of access to just logistics in the manufacturing world, just understanding the whole custom deal. And so I would go to a lot of different factories and just different products, whether it's hair to personal goods, electronics.
It's all made there.
Yeah, it's all made there. And so I started to really understand the world. And so I kind of started consulting for a while for some companies out of America that needed that access. And so I started to see the value in that and just kind of building what we call, which is like guanxi, which is your network. And so that kind of gave me opportunities to kind of build a bigger network.
So Nike went the route of Japan, eventually found the China religion, but you went the China route.
Right,
so
straight to it.
So where did you come up with the idea for BatteryXchange?
Yeah, man, it was that just being, I feel like some of the best products are from founders or individuals that are like inconvened or like see a problem, just like, hey, there has to be a better way, right? That's typically how the better companies come about, right? So me and my co-founder Aubrey, he was in the program as well for the MBA course, and we would travel like days sometimes. So we were traveling from like Shanghai to Shenzhen at this time, and we found ourselves, my cell phone was like 5%, his was like completely dead, and we're just like,
I'd laugh. I would cringe. My fiance, I'll see her power get down to 3 and it doesn't phase her. But if I get down to like 40, I'm sweating.
Anxiety. So low battery anxiety is a real thing, you know. And so like I had that. We all had that. And like not only was it, you know, bad as far as just like our device was going, that was our only way home, you know. And so like we had to utilize like a Uber app, which is called DD over there, and we just were so inconvenient. It was just like, man, there has to be a better way. We didn't speak the language. We didn't have any family or friends that we could just call on. Like, and nobody had a charger.
And the translator is on the phone too.
Yes,
so out of power.
Yes, yeah.
What's Aubrey's background?
So he's more into marketing, business development. Okay. He worked with BT and some other marketing agencies as well. Cool. So he's definitely the guy behind the brand. I'd say that, and that's something that we've been able to do.
Awesome. Was there a single aha moment that you knew you had to do it? Because it sounds like you were having some stress at the time. I take it that was on multiple occasions you felt it, but at some point you're like, I'm doing this. Or did you do a little bit of research? What was that kind of founding big bang moment for you?
Yeah, I think it was a part of that situation. And then before we even knew what customer discovery was, we just started asking people like, how often were you running into this inconvenience and like, how much would you pay? Right. So we did that. And then we started to look as we were like, it was my last semester of school. So I'm looking at America. I'm like looking at the market opportunity. There's like 300 million cell phone users. And we learned like only 15% of those individuals consistently carry a spare charger with them. So we're just like, hey, there's a lot of people that are like running into this inconvenience that don't have a convenient solution. So I think that was it as far as like the data makes sense. We understand it. Enough people told us that they would pay for it. So we just kind of came back and dove into it.
So how did you go about turning that into a reality? I mean, you've mentioned the first couple things that I think of as valid. You were validating that it's a need. You're validating that there's a market for it. You're validating that people would pay for it in a way. When do you start to actually turn that into reality, and how does that work? Yeah,
we came back, and that's when I learned about the whole accelerator world, and we got into an earlier one, City Startup Labs, local, accelerator for like minority founders, and it was through that it exposed me to understanding like, go-to-market strategy, like business modeling and like just various things, and like taking my MBA experience and applying that to like the startup world. And so we knew we needed to get a product made, and so like that was like one of the first steps. We had built some really good relationships in China, and so we still had a business partner there, and so he was like boots on the ground, able to find us several manufacturers actually. And so we would travel back and forth and just like vetting the products. So they would send it to us. And then once we finally found our, a supplier that we felt like we would grow with, we went back and just told them like, this is exactly how we want it. This is what we want. And then we had like an MVP built and we just threw it out into the market.
That's great. And how much money did you spend in that process to get to that first MVP build?
Yeah, it was a couple $1,000.
Okay. So not a huge spend.
Yeah,
not what it would have been 20 years ago to try and bring this type of solution to market.
It wasn't crazy, but I know a part of that was relationship based. Like we had like especially like Mr. John, like I built a relationship with him, and it was just like he trusts me. Relationships go so much further, and like being boots on the ground, like understanding the language, understanding this world that they live in, I think that allowed us to honestly not have to pay what other companies would necessarily have to pay. And like even to this day, like our cost on a lot of things aren't what it's like, you know, other companies are potentially 4 times, 5 times what we're looking at. So
yeah, I think understanding that supply chain is huge. A friend of mine built a very successful business manufacturing women's shoes, and he had the supply chain nailed in China. And now any new business that he starts, whenever he has to source anything, he's got the boots on the ground to call. He launched a line of food trucks and restaurants selling acai bowls, and he wanted to do kind of supplements to go with those. And so he ordered this obscure algae powder that he was able to find a very highly lab certified source in China at a fraction of the cost of what it would have been in America. It's a real advantage when you have that experience for sure. So getting to that point of the MVP, what surprised you the most along the way?
One, how hard it is. You know, I think that was the biggest thing because, you know, as a founder, you just know it's going to work. You know, it makes sense, right? And so just really understanding, like even where we're at now, that we are needing to change the behavior in essence of what individuals typically do, and like pointing out the fact that it's super inefficient and there's a better way, there's a better solution. I think getting over that hump. And then I'll say the biggest thing that I faced at first was like understanding like how important it was to build a team. You know, fortunately, I feel like I lead, as I'm a passionate leader, you know, and so people, you know, gravitate towards it. But it was just like understanding what we needed, who we needed in order to be successful. You know, I'm not necessarily like a hardware expert at that point, you know, like now I am, like I know everything about it. But then, you know, I needed to find individuals that fit certain, you know, skill sets to be able to like get us to the point we're at now. So
and they all have different motivations. And even for a leader, a natural leader like yourself, that's one thing that's difficult is leadership that works for one person doesn't for another. And especially because you're trying to round out skill sets. You're not saying I need this one thing and stamp it out 20 times. If you were hiring 20 full stack developers, they're probably motivated by some of the same things. But when you're talking a hardware expert and then somebody in sales and then somebody that understands supply chain, very interesting. So I met you literally months before COVID unfolded. How would you describe your progress up to that point? Because I think you were a little further along than MVP at that point.
Yeah. Man, honestly, the red carpet was rolling out. Like we had our first big convention center. We had our first stadium, and we were really thriving a lot in this event space. And then it faltered, you know, and like.
So before COVID hits, what did you think were your next steps? Was it go raise money? Was it?
It was raise money, but it was also like product market fit in those spaces, right? And it's just like continue to kind of scale up. And I felt like we were a little bit closer to raising like big time capital. We were, and like one of the things that allowed us to, you know, thrive even through COVID was because we were able to raise a little bit of money. We raised $115,000 from like a crowdfunding campaign. And it was because we were really intentional on like building a community of like brand loyalty, but also supporters, individuals that just wanted to see us be successful. And so like it was that, leveraging that based off of like our previous traction to be able to like, you know, kind of stay afloat and raise capital.
So when did you close that $115,000 crowdfunding round?
It was actually like Q1 of last year. So like early Q1, like right before things actually got serious, you know? So yeah.
So you're looking in January, February thinking the world looks great. I'm getting ready to scale. I've got $115,000 that I can deploy. I'm starting to build my team. Talk to me about when you realized COVID was going to be a big deal for you guys.
Yeah, so it was actually March, April, where we were intentional on a community, right? Like building individuals, like finding supporters that support us and like, you know, reciprocating that. And so we had this big investor showcase virtual summit it wasn't virtual at the time. It was supposed to be in person.
Yeah.
So we're doing this big event, and I don't remember the exact date, but it was sometime in March that it was scheduled. And then it was in Charlotte, and we're inviting everybody out just to, you know, talk about the success of the crowdfund and talk about our future plans. And then North Carolina came out with that, you know, just the restrictions. And it was just like, okay, stay at home order. And it was just like, okay, you know, we'll give it another 2 weeks. So we said, you know, we'll give it 2 weeks and then we'll have it on this date. And then, you know, it got serious and more serious. And so we ended up having to like cancel the in-person event. Later on did a virtual event, but it was just like, that was the moment that I was just like, not only do we have to figure something out, but like time is ticking, you know, on us.
Well, and clearly events of over 5 people are kind of your bread and butter for your business model. So what kind of conversations are you and Aubrey having this time, or any other close advisors that you have? What were the conversations? Was it, this is serious, guys? And walk me through kind of what the conclusions you're coming to as you have those conversations.
Scary, dark times, honestly. Like, because it was just like, you think one way and then you literally have to adapt it, right? And so at that time, fortunately for us, we were also building this new product that, you know, we talked about the Apollos and the Hercules and stuff like that. And so we hadn't noticed that this was going to be applicable to the business space until we kind of were going through it. And, you know, it was just one of, like, I feel like we pride ourselves on resilience and strategic thinking. So we leverage press a lot to, you know, stay in the top of people's minds, just like, hey, we're still building, we're still figuring it out, we're doing this, just so that people know that we're still like gaining momentum, we're still growing. And then another thing was really having our team come in and just like build with us as far as like what's going to be that next step. We started to look at different models. We brought everybody in our advisory core just to kind of talk through what opportunities we could you know, do and leverage. And then we started to see that businesses were paying like high dollar for charging solutions that were, you know, inefficient and ineffective. And so we kind of thought that was a lane for us. And then it started to make sense as we went through the year. Even with restricted times, it was just like there was still this like inefficiency, and we knew like obviously the world was going to open up sooner or later, you know. And so honestly, like it was a dark time, but it was also a time for us to plan to change this approach and, you know, the whole world of pivoting. You know?
Well, I've interviewed so many people on this podcast where all of the ones who were successful, what I noticed was that, number one, they stayed calm and they were honest about what they were seeing. They might have, for the first week or two, said, oh, we're going to be fine, but there's always a point in the successful ones where they said, okay, this is real, and we have to deal with it, and we need to find where the opportunity is.
And you know what was scary? It was like other founder friends of mine were like closing shop, you know? And so it was just like, am I a crazy one? You know, but I also think that it was throughout that time that we really connected. Again, this community, I'm always say that, like we were connected with our community. We started, you know, I was hosting virtual sessions, building our brand, which is like Live Life Charge, because throughout this time, it's not only like, we're powering, you know, devices or like, you know, things like that. Like we're powering people too. Like the brand speaks for itself. That's bigger than just the actual product itself. So we were doing things around like mental health and, you know, wellness and, you know, even literacy, just all kinds of things that just went to that core essence of, if you have these things in place, you're living life charged, right? And so
I like that a lot. Like it's more than just charging your battery, right? It's charging life.
It's a lifestyle. It's a brand. And so I think that's what helped us get a lot of eyes and ears on just like what we were trying to do, because we care about the people. We care about, you know, our brand being seen as something that like motivates people to be at their best. Because if you don't have a charged phone, you can't connect, right? And so you can't be at your best. But the same with these other elements is just like, if you don't have these intact, you're not your ultimate efficiency. So
how would you say your strategy shifted from, it sounds like from February to April? Was the strategy, let's build what we've got, build the community, or was there more to the strategy for when you were thinking about what's 2020 going to be for us?
For us, it was development, actually. Like, even though this whole brand thing was, we had enough runway for the year. Like, we were thin. We spread it thin, but, you know, we had enough runway to build out the product. Then we had to be intentional on, you know, showcasing the product, and then, you know, building out the mobile app and everything like that. So we just set milestones, and we were just like, regardless of not being able to test it out or like not being able to like really put it in people's hands, we knew what we wanted. We had a vision on what we needed to build. So we just kind of stuck to that. And honestly, that was a time where I leaned on my team the most because, I think, I had a son during this time. So my life had completely changed, and I had to grow as a leader and understand, not even just delegating, just like trusting people. Like when he was born in August, we were mid-development of that.
What's his birthday? I'm August 10th.
Oh, really? So. Oh, he's the 4th.
Okay,
he's the 4th. Cool. So, yeah, he's right around that.
He's a Leo. Okay,
yeah,
awesome.
Yeah. Good dude. But, so it's just like I kind of grew in that leadership. And then, my team was able to step up and just stick to where we needed to be because we knew that, one, again, we went back to customer discovery. Like businesses were attracted to this value add that we could bring, right? Increasing foot traffic, increasing transaction size, like all these different data points that we were able to kind of cultivate and pull. And so we were just like, man, we gotta build it. We gotta figure it out. And so,
well, you probably can demonstrate that people stay longer if their phone is charged. Because I'm going to leave. If I get to 3%, I have to leave.
Exactly.
I have no choice.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow, that's really interesting. So second, third, fourth quarter of last year, it sounds like the milestones you hit are you get the new devices built. Or designed or whatever, whatever.
And the mobile app.
And then the mobile app.
Yeah. And really understanding the business model, right? Like how we were going to, market to these businesses that we hadn't really spent time on in the past. It was really the end user. And it was a lot of figuring it out. It was a lot of like, finding individuals in our network. That's why the crowdfund was so advantageous because there were like consultants and different individuals in those spaces that we could lean on and do grudge sessions, whiteboard sessions, and just like walking through what makes sense for us in these next, few months. So
that's great. So where would you say your focus is today?
Yeah. Fortunately, right, things are, opening back up a little bit. So it's just brand identity, especially in the Charlotte region. We have a pipeline. Our goal is to have 80 kiosk machines placed by the end of this year.
80?
Yeah.
Wow,
yeah,
that's aggressive.
Yeah, honestly, and, it's the chicken and the egg. It's like the demand is there. Like it's just, the infrastructure to be able to fulfill those contracts for enterprises and small businesses now. And so that's what we're kind of figuring on now. But, placements, education, right? Not only for the end user, but the customer itself, like the business, like, what's the value of BatteryXchange and like what can I learn? How can I better communicate to my customer? What are the experiences of my customers now? And so like that's going to be huge in like our ability to scale to other markets and just like really understanding our value on both sides.
What so that sounds like all very operational and sales focused, which is great. What are you focused on financially these days?
Yeah. So revenue, right, and increasing the MRR. Each and every month we're definitely seeing increase because we're getting new locations, right?
Yeah.
It's more money coming in, but capital raising. We're, currently raising capital right now, and, that's going to give us, some really good runway, ability to fulfill these contracts. And so I'm really, really looking forward to closing that over the next few months to be able to just give us the
you'll be back in fundraising mode 6 months later, so don't look too far.
Right. But I'm kind of under, and like that's the growth that I feel like I've even had to have is just like, obviously that's like a priority, right? Like everything is capital.
To me, and especially in a manufacturing business, like you're raising capital is just becomes a full-time job. I mean, you'll get comfortable after this round, and then all of a sudden you're going to sell some big deal, and you're going to be like, oh shit,
right.
I got working capital requirements now, and nobody's going to lend me money. So I've been in that boat before, but to me it just becomes a mindset, and the more often you do it, the better you get at it. I had Maggie Williams from Skiptown on here recently, and she raised 2 rounds of equity funding and then did a debt round to fund Skiptown. And every build they do, they're going to have to go raise money because you got to put up the money to build these beautiful facilities. And it was interesting to see just how she's matured and built the confidence in the process and just really understands how it works. So
and I mean, I know a little bit about her, but I know she also has a really good team. And so that's what I'm focused on as well, because if my thing is like, efficiency and bandwidth. So like my team now knows what I need to focus on, and like I'm really intentional on breaking down what everybody needs to know. Yep. And like those type of processes have to be like, as we scale, it has to be like, you know, intentional. So
yeah, you're not going to do it by yourself or even with a great partner like Aubrey.
Right,
it takes so much more to build anything meaningful. You really have to build that team. How have you gone about building the team to date?
Yeah, a lot of it has been putting myself in spaces where individuals are like looking to be a part of a team. So I've been a part of like a bunch of accelerators, found a few individuals in that space. Honestly, even when we were in the event space, you know, I used to be a part of like everything, right? Hands-on, but I would meet a lot of individuals that had really good insight on the company. And so like I take those conversations and I build off of them, and I figure out individual skill sets. So I've done that. But I feel like I'm really intentional on network and relationships. So I could always leverage individuals within my network to be a part of my team, or, you know, I always feel like you're one or two people away from whoever you need anyway. So
especially in a small market like Charlotte.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So sharing it with the community and letting them know what I'm kind of looking for has been super helpful as well. And then we also we got a pretty cool like internship program that we're running with like HBCUs especially. And just like cultivating them to be hopefully able to work with us like in the future type of thing.
So is that like is Johnson C. Smith one that you're working with here locally?
So we started. We would like to, and
we had great luck with them at Level, by the way. It was they really do have some fantastic people over there.
But we started with Winston-Salem State, where I graduated in A&T, and then Johnson C. Smith is next on the radar. I actually used to run track in college, so I have a good relationship with like just that athletic department, and they've connected me with Tarek. Yeah, he's like over the entrepreneurial center over there. So,
okay, very cool. Very cool. So you hinted at this, but how do you think about advisors and other extended team members? So you're building the team and people that are working and partners and that sort of thing, but how do you think about advisors and I call them extended team members, people who may not be on your payroll, but they're part of the team.
Yeah. I mean, it's always intentional in like industry, right? So, you know, we definitely have individuals over like hardware, software, sales, you know, capital raising, all these various elements, strategic partnerships. But one of the things that I have done over the past few years is when I meet individuals that I build a relationship or rapport with, like I figure out what they're good at or what their thing is, you know? And so, you know, when I'm in a rut and I just can't figure it out, whether it's 3 a.m. or like, you know, 2 p.m, I kind of have an understanding of the individuals that I could reach out to get some insight about this particular area. And so I kind of keep like a Rolodex of that. But, you know, we do have our core advisors that we meet with once a week, every 2 weeks. And then we also leverage communities like the Innovate Charlottes of the world. And that's been super helpful. So we have those set advisors, and then I have my own mentors and advisors that I go to as well. And then I also have individuals that are in the spaces that I'm in or when I want to get to, like big time, like founders that have like really done it, and like I brought them as advisors as well. So it's a little.
I was trying to remember how you and I met. I don't even remember. Someone connected us.
I was trying to actually think about that, but it was just like the Charlotte ecosystem. It was just like this. Oh, you know what? It was at Holly at the city of Charlotte.
Davidson, or no, Holly at the city of Charlotte. I'm looking through my emails right now.
I want to say it was somebody from, because I think her name was Holly, but she worked with like the city of Charlotte, and I think she connected us because your involvement in the startup world. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I could not remember.
Everything happens for a reason.
I mean, I remember sitting down in the WeWork, and talking to you, and just the questions you asked, and this is for any young budding entrepreneur reaching out to people. Like I think your approach was really good. You had, hey, look, these are the 5 or 6 things that I want to ask you. And I remember thinking, God, this kid already like knows what he wants from me. That's so respectful of my time compared to some other people who have, you know, other approaches. Would you say that was something you instinctively understood, how to approach people like like that through introductions like that, or is it something that something that you built over time, would you say?
I'd say built over time, but relationships and valuing people has always been top of mind. Like my parents grew me up like that. And like now my motto is like, give more value than you expect to receive and you'll never be without. So like when you do that, relationships like this come about. But I am serious when I get like the access to relationships. But I also think that I've always been like an old soul type of thing. Not calling you old, but
I am. It's okay. Right. Just the gray hairs to prove it.
Yeah, just like growing up, I always had like friends or like mentors that were a lot older that would shine light and like make me think, when I do things or when I ask questions. So I feel like that has cultivated to me as like a founder, and so that's why I build relationships like this.
That's awesome. Well, look, I've had very important people in this community reach out to me on your behalf, so you're doing something right for sure.
That,
yeah.
I mean, the Charlotte community has been big to me, and I'm like wanting to make sure that like I could be at my best self, so that I could lead the way for like other entrepreneurs that may look like me or like come from where I come from, in order to like figure out how to navigate throughout this space.
Well, and that's interesting. So I had Sean Tolliver and Kaya on from Canada Tracks, and they talked about, obviously they're minority founders, and they talked about some challenges that they faced. There were also some opportunities that Bobby Robinson from IntelliDoc highlighted. But what has your experience been as a minority founder?
Yeah. I mean, how much time we got? Like
whatever you need.
I know.
It needs to be talked about.
Right,
so
right. It's kind of crazy because I like ran track all the way through college, right? So I always use this analogy, like we're all running the same race. Like I ran the 800, right? 2 laps.
Ooh, that's a brutal one.
I know. Yeah, it's like a sprint now. But like, the founder world that I live in, being a minority founder, is like everybody stepping on the line, and like I just have added weight. Right, like try running an 800-meter race with like a whole bunch of good athletes, and you have like 20-pound weights on you. You know, like that's just, and like the weight in the startup world is the relationships that I have to like fight hard to get, that are like kind of given to other individuals. And I think another part of that is, this whole pitch environment is like, it's already brutal enough. And then like coming in as like an African-American founder, you can feel the weight, the questions. It's just like, where does he come from? Is he good enough? Like all these different variables. But again, I'm running the same race than this like Caucasian founder that like Duke grad, Carolina, all these different things that
Sean made a really good example, or made a really good point to me that I had never considered. He said, John, everybody would tell me to raise a friends and family round. He's like, my friends and family are broke. There's no way I'm going to ask them for money. Like, I can't. So you're starting from a very different place. You're on a racing block that's 200 meters behind if you don't have friends and family, because call it privilege, call it whatever you want. But for me, coming up to go raise $100,000 friends and family round wasn't much. It just wasn't even something you think about. It's like, people will find $5 or $10 grand to give you, but that wasn't his experience. So,
and like my family's like, I'm a like immigrant family, like, from Jamaica. I'm a first generation American. So like not only like it's hard in the Black community, but it's harder being an immigrant. I think there's a lot of immigrants that have been like successful, obviously, but they have to figure out a way. One of the things that it's funny, this is like one of my favorite podcasts with like how I built this, but it's just like, you always hear the story. Yeah, my uncle had 90K just laying around. So I start like, if I had 50K to start, 20K to start out, and so, and that's why I feel really good. And I just know that we're on the right trajectory with what we even did in the crowdfunding campaign. Like we raised 115 grand, which is not typical from our community, not necessarily like my family, immediate or whatever, but individuals from like my fraternity or like our university and like spaces like that. But like 85% of those individuals were African Americans. And granted, it wasn't like a lot of $5,000 checks or anything. It was like a lot more, 250. But for us, we had to be intentional to cultivate this idea of investing in the startup space while it's legal, right? Because, typically these communities have been, not able to touch this opportunity. And that's why, again, wealth building opportunities. And so like we were, of course, like getting investors, but we were also like building this like investor community, which was really cool to me. But I mean, like honestly, and, transparent conversation, but I even felt like even in the region that I'm in, the traction and the things that we've done, I think a lot of it, as far as like being undercapitalized, is because I'm a minority founder. It's like I see individuals raising money. I'm just like, man, they haven't even done half of what I've done, or they don't have the, and all these different things. But I can't use that as an excuse. Like people now see me as like a voice in the community and an entrepreneur that's like on the, the come up or whatever. And it's just like, dang, like I wish it was just easier, but it's not.
It's not. And the advice I would give you, which it's easy coming from where I'm sitting to say this, but I do think that adversity that doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and it's seasoning and it's going to serve you well in the future. But I also would encourage you, and I've already heard you talk about this earlier in the show, don't forget that lesson and pay it forward when you've had the big exit,
right? And
remember the struggle that the others are going through who do look like you, and support them for sure, because it isn't fair, but it is encouraging to me to see that there are, if I compare now to 5 years ago, the number of minority and women-owned businesses that are coming up and that are figuring out how to find their opportunities. Women face a very similar challenge. I forget, there was a famous study where the nature of questions to men and women, these are both white men and white women, so it's no different from a race perspective, but the questions that were asked of the women were much more about how do you deal with pain and how do you deal with rough times, as opposed to how do you go and grow. And that's just, that bias makes it completely unfair to raise money. But it feels like there is some progress, and if we keep making progress, even if it's slow, eventually we fix these inequities for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we're on the right track. Over the last few years, I've seen progress. One of the things I even realized is that not only are we like Black tech founders, we're like unicorns even in this like product hardware space. So like, first of all, there's black, white, yellow. There's not a lot of people in this space, period, let alone like being an African American. And so that's why, we're super intentional on like sharing. Like we had a really big, when events were a thing, we had this big event at Winston-Salem State. It was homecoming, I think it was 2019, just exposing, I think we had like 500 students there, which was big during homecoming time. And just exposing them that this can be possible. Like two African Americans with no family or friends could be in China and figure out a business, come back while finding a manufacturer and like build this company, build a product, build a mobile app, all these different things. And so the more and more we can do that, like you said, like, of course I would want to exit to really showcase, but the more and more we could be intentional in like sharing this with our communities, the more and more entrepreneurs that look like me will come about.
Well, I think keeping that mentality will serve you well. I think that even when you have success, I think keep a chip on your shoulder about that would be my advice, because a chip on your shoulder serves you well.
Gotcha.
And having something to prove and something and an audience that you want to take care of, I think that those are very, very good motivators for what it's worth. So you mentioned the city, I can't remember the name of it, the incubator for
City Startup Labs.
City Startup Labs. Are there any other resources that you've found helpful that are specific to minorities?
Yeah, I think now there's a lot more grant opportunities and like even the pitch circuit now. I will say that there's starting to be more intentional pitch funding opportunities for like minority companies. So like I think some of the communities that I connect with are like HBCU VC, right, which is a nationwide community of HBCU students and graduates that they help cultivate and trying to build capital. So that's a community.
I'll link to them in the show notes. I'm taking a few notes here.
Valence community is another one. And I'm not sure if you know Sherelle Dorsey at The Plug. She used to run Black Tech Charlotte here in Charlotte.
I've read about her. I've never met her. But
yeah. She runs a whole publication that's really, really unique with...
What's that publication called?
The Plug. plug, and
Cool.
it's just really highlighting just the tech space and especially like black opportunity, well, black founder opportunities, or just like showcasing the highlights of companies that are like individuals that look like me that are like doing it right and like moving and shaking and just encouraging to the community. So it's not like everything is bad, like, you know, what social media or like the news kind of tells us and stuff.
So you mentioned going out and thinking about fundraising now, and you thought about it before, but obviously you had the funding from the crowdsource, and you, I won't say put your plans on hold, but COVID changed that a little bit, right? Like the right timing for that. But what do you think the investors you've talked to don't understand about minority-owned companies? And we've talked about it. Women and minorities are dramatically underrepresented in angel and VC investing.
So one, investments are about relationship, right? Our investors, even like the ones on the table, relationships built over time. And I feel like investors forget that if you're human and genuine, you can build a relationship with almost anybody. And what's unfortunate is that because of a lot of the businesses that come out of these communities, they're not like the stereotypical, like just, you know, tech founder, Harvard grad, engineer. Like it's not that. But there's a whole lot of money, billions of dollars that can be manifested with companies, just like a little investment here.
Well, Magic Johnson has proved this. He made himself a billionaire after. I mean, obviously he had
right. He had a good start, but
he had a good start, but he made a lot with it. I remember bringing Starbucks to his neighborhoods. You know what I mean? Like he really understood like how do you make money doing this? And I think you're onto something.
Yeah, and I feel like they just fear that it's gonna be a harder way to connect with these founders because again, it's relationship, but it's not. Like we're regular people, you know, like there's this uncomfortability that can just be alleviated by just stepping outside and just saying, hey, I just want to know you as a person. And then let's talk about business. And I feel like if more investors would take that approach, they're missing out on like crazy, even like the founders that I'm like starting to get exposed to. I'm like, man, like y'all are working on some cool things. Like I want to connect you with this individual, like, or that. And so I think that's a miss.
So how did you come to Charlotte? I don't think you were born here, right?
Yeah, I wasn't. Right. So crazy enough, so I ran track all the way through college. And I grew up in New York, so the Bronx. And I feel like I have the best of both worlds because...
You a Yankees fan?
I am a Yankees fan.
Go Yankees.
Okay, yes. I wasn't sure. I just talked to somebody and he was a Red Sox fan. And I was just like, right.
Yeah. Don't talk to him again.
Right. But I grew up in, you know, the Bronx and just really understood the grind, the hustle and bustle. But I also understood like culture and relationships. And then literally I was coming off of like this big win from Philadelphia. And then my parents picked me up and said, hey, we're going to North Carolina for a visit. And they just came down here and fell in love with the...
Was that Winston-Salem?
No, we came straight to Charlotte.
To Charlotte.
Straight to Charlotte.
And then you applied to Winston-Salem.
Yes, yeah. So I did high school here and a little bit of middle school as well. So
not that I know the high school is great, but what high school did you go to?
It's Vance High School in the university area.
Okay,
yeah, Charlotte.
I have not heard of that. I'm not surprised though. I moved down here when I was 28 years old.
Yeah. A little bit different, but it's a pretty popular school. I think we won states in football like a year ago or 2 years ago. So
wow, very cool. Very cool. So you go from you move to Charlotte, you go to high school here, you go to college, not far away. What's Winston-Salem State? An hour and a half?
About an hour and a half. Yeah.
And then does Pepsi bring you back to Charlotte? Or?
Yeah. So I was a student athlete all 4 years, captain last 2 years, and then I just started interning. Like, you know, I had like internships, but I wouldn't even say interning. I was job shadowing. Like my last 2 years, I was the guy that when speakers would come, I would like go talk to him and like figure out if I could job shadow him. So I started to get exposure to all these different worlds, and Pepsi and some other companies came on campus and they had management training programs and leadership development programs. And I kind of knew I was always going to get into entrepreneurship. So I was just like, what's going to give me the most exposure to all facets of business? And so got through Pepsi, went through like 18 months and traveled all through like the region. And then there was this opportunity. I had built this really unique relationship. One of our what was his divisional vice presidents, matter of fact, and they were buying Charlotte as a region, and they said, "Hey, new region, new market for our type of business. Why don't you come and like help it get off the ground?" type of thing. And so I was just like, "Why not?" And I was a part of the like acquisition team because we were like an independent bottler, so it was just kind of like a different dynamic. And so I was a part of like revitalizing Charlotte, and so that's what brought me back here. And then I just fell in love with the city again, because when I was here, I was, high school, it's just different.
Yeah.
And then now I saw, even what we were talking about, the South Ends, the Nodas, and like these areas starting to really be like rambunctious with millennials. And I was just like, man, this is where I need to be at.
There's an energy here. You feel it. I came here in 2004, late 2004. Started traveling and moved here in 2005, and I could just feel an energy here that is it's palpable for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely something that everybody notices when they're here. What have you seen change through spending your time in high school, then going away to college, and then coming back, and then the time you spent here since then?
It's a cool city. Like, I don't feel like it. Granted, I think we're still figuring out our identity. And like what we're gonna be known for. Like,
I tell people I live in Charlotte, and it takes me 20 minutes to get to North Carolina.
Right. Yeah. It's quite different.
It's a different thing. And there's parts of North Carolina that I love, but I think Charlotte is so unique inside of North Carolina for sure.
It is, but it's just like it's its own element. We got the ball teams. We got the art scene. We got the outdoor scene.
We have the baby.
Right. We do have. He actually went to my high school, so he went to Vance High School. Yeah, but we do have the baby. But we just have this like cool and I even feel like we're going through like a renaissance phase where like again a lot of the like younger professionals are making this city what it is, and I feel like I didn't see that when I was like growing up. It was just Charlotte.
Yeah. Well, and I never felt pride in where I lived. I grew up in the Washington D.C. suburbs, and we took pride in our football team, and we took pride in.
I don't know why, but
well, back then they were good.
They were good back then.
But remember, I'm old. I remember a day when we won 3 Super Bowls in 12 years, but like we've been irrelevant since then. But to me, coming down to Charlotte, everybody here, whether you were from Charlotte or you moved to Charlotte, like wants the city to do well. There's just an energy here that I think is it's pretty unique, and maybe it's because we're such a small city, and maybe when we get to Atlanta size, we lose our soul. But it's pretty awesome to me being here. Yeah,
and it's pretty it's pretty small knit. Like you kind of have these various communities, but everybody kind of knows everybody. Still.
It takes 3 introductions to get to anybody in this city, maybe 2,
which is cool.
Yeah. So, talk to me about raising capital. How far along are you in that process now, and what do you think your next raise looks like? You don't have to give specific figures, but is this get me through to some next step, or is it something else?
Yeah, we just opened up I'd say a smaller round, but a true seed round, because we done the preliminary, like, hey, building a product, we've done all that, the pre-seed. And so we're raising a round right now. And again, I talk about relationships. A lot of the angel groups or angel individuals are relationships that have been built over the last few years. And so we're seeing a lot of traction with those individuals. And I want to close this round next month, or so, close it fairly quickly. And that's going to give us enough runway for at least the next year, based on how quick we can get to some of these milestones. Because if they happen a little bit quicker, we might need money a little bit quicker.
It's a good problem to have.
Right. But I think this is going to allow us to really... The traction points, the community, the brand, just the tangibility side that often doesn't come with the startup, we'll be able to prove that with this raise. And so I'm really excited. It seems like it's going in the right direction.
Yeah.
You know, people are interested. So, you know, just continuing to get the word out there and expand upon that.
What has surprised you most as you've gone out and raised money? Is it that it's gotten a little easier than you might have assumed, or is it that, you know, what is surprising about the process?
I wouldn't say it's easier, but I will say I'm more comfortable now. And I'd say this, and a part of it is climate. And unfortunately, even just going back to the, you know, minority founder conversation, you know, we had to go through like a last year and the unfortunate events that took place to where I'm at least getting a look now. I felt like there were some conversations where like literally it's just because who I was, like I would just not be in those doors. And I feel like I'm able to like navigate and tackle and get into some conversations now where I probably wouldn't be able to a few years back. And so I'm appreciative of that, you know, like I'm here as a blessing, you know, because of things that have happened. So like now I got to be at my optimal space, you know, to really take these conversations and take them to the next level. So
it's interesting because I you know, there were a lot of events last year that changed a lot of things, but there's a company in Great Britain that I'm a big fan of, and I'm going to have their head of North America on the podcast in a couple weeks here. And I was catching up with him and I'm like, how's business going? And he's going through, they own 17 different businesses, and he's going through one, and he's like, look, and they're not minority owned. I mean, they're a British company. And he said, look, we decided to pivot this one remote learning platform that we developed. We decided to go all in on diversity and inclusion. And he's like, our founders felt like it was a good idea. We just felt like that was the right way to go. We made that decision 2 years ago, and we started selling that way. And he said, once the George Floyd thing happened, he was like, every Fortune 500 company wanted to talk to them. And so my hope is that out of dark events like that, it creates opportunities when we realize like, okay, we've got to do some things to fix this. So like, again, there's a lot of different events that happen in 2020 that you could be talking about, but at least there are some things coming out of the corrections that needed to happen where, you know, where the right products benefit. Yeah.
Well, you're starting to see a lot of companies. I just hope it like matriculates over the next few years to open up space. Like we even had an opportunity with BT and Mountain Dew. We got to they had this Real Change Initiative Fund where they had like a bunch of startup founders apply, right? So a couple hundred, I don't remember the exact number, a lot of startups applied, and we made it to the final 5. And so we were able to, you know, pitch and get connections. Like now I have C-suite connections to those spaces. And so you see a lot of companies starting to do that. And I think, you know, one of the things being a startup and like fighting for capital is a lot of it is capital. Like granted, there's things that you got to know how to run a business too. Like that's one thing, but you know, capital is really important. And once you have it, you can do things a little bit different.
Yep,
so.
Absolutely. So when you look back over the years of thinking about raising money to where you are now, what do you wish you knew earlier that now you've learned about raising money?
I think just like understanding how to like, one, like, yeah, you want to find an investor, but it should also be an investor finding you. Like, I feel like I didn't really understand my value to where I understand it now. And just like finding the right investor and like making sure that they're bringing value to the table. Because we used to hear money, 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 and investors had the upper hand. It was just like, no, we need can you connect me to strategic partners, or are you coming with this, or are you coming with that? Are you helping connect to other investors? And I think, you know, entrepreneurs are getting a little bit smarter and knowing how to tactfully ask questions to really figure out what's coming with the money, you know. And
I think there's a lot more money chasing not many more great ideas too. So I think that works to the favor of founders right now of all colors and creeds. So when I first got introduced to you, one of the things you were very concerned about was work-life balance. You mentioned having a kid since then. How has the process of striking the balance as you build this business been for you?
I learned you can't balance it. It's just like, so for me, I mean, you know, I started to learn that you have to just be present when you're in these spaces. So one of the things that I try to do, I'm not perfect at all, but like as a dad, you know, I'll go through my day and then, you know, I pick Jonah up from daycare, and, you know, when I'm with him, like nothing else should matter. Like even if I got a million no's today and I'm completely just distraught and upset, like I can't push that on him because he has no clue and he doesn't even care. You know, and it's the same with like my wife and like even my family, just being present. I feel like I used to always, like everything was just business and everything was, and I feel like now that I'm balancing my mental space, I feel a lot more energetic when I am in the business, because like I know I need to channel my energy and put it all in that time and not just kind of go throughout. Not saying I don't wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and still have to do this and still have to do that, but I think just being present in various atmospheres and times is something that I've grown in.
Yeah, and not that I'm the person to give advice. I was asked during a panel right before the pandemic, like, how do you go about striking that balance? And I'm like, honestly, I don't do it enough. You know, I went through a divorce in the last year, so it's, you know, it's tough. But what you said that resonates with me is my thing with my boys. I have two younger kids, 8 and 12, and even before the divorce, even you know, over the last few years, especially when we were building Level and I was really, really busy, I always, my Saturday and Sunday was always for them. You know, I put the phone down. You're not going to get in touch with me unless I'm bored. I'm going to pick the phone up and be like, okay, they don't want to hang with me right now. But like, my thing was go to Carowinds, go to the pool, you know, take them there and just immerse myself in them. And you're right, it helps your time at work because that is recharging your batteries.
Yes, exactly.
That is the battery exchange, is when you get to spend that time with your kids. So you guys planning to have more? Or?
So at least another one. For some reason I always wanted like a daughter, so I'm gonna try for that. If not, I'll just get 2 boys and be fine.
So I have 3 boys. My fiance has 3 boys, and we have said that if we could guarantee a daughter, we would have another one.
But can't,
But you can't guarantee it because we're not. Maybe your buddies in China could guarantee it.
Right. It's a little different there, but nah, man. I mean, I love family. I love how like he is the first grandchild on both sides, so he's spoiled, man. And it's just like the love that they have. He was able to meet my grandmother, which is his great grandmother, who is 89. You know, she just came to Charlotte to live with my parents. So things like that, like you just want your family to be a part of, which is crazy. And side note, real quick, but I remember my last semester in China. You know, I'm on the brinks of building BatteryXchange, and I had a crazy good and well-paid job opportunity out there. And it was just like, man, like now that I'm like, I built BatteryXchange and like I have this family support for my son, I like it. But then it was just like, man, we'll figure it out. We'll find a babysitter or something. But that community and building, you know, individual and like upbringing them, you know, you need that. And so I understand it now.
No, it's a whole different thing. It really doesn't compare to anything we do in the business world. Well, I mean, the reality is if you have a son, you're still going to want a daughter. So you may go back for a third after that one.
Yeah. But I'm good. We at least said that we're going to at least like 2 years increments. Yeah. So we'll try.
So it's funny. I had a similar but opposite experience. My I have 3 boys I mentioned, and my mom had 3 boys. I'm one of 3 boys. And so I remember when my mom heard the sex of each baby, she was like, well, you can have another one. You can have another one.
Right. Keep going.
And but then luckily my brother had our first, the first daughter in the family, so the granddaughter, and now he's had 3. So
wow.
But I just remember like that girl is so spoiled because she's the first girl in the family, just like your son, like you feel that for sure.
Yeah, because like on my side of the family, it's nothing but boys, but hers, it's nothing but girls. So they love having a boy, but for us, we're just like searching for that girl.
And obviously it's cliche, but we all want healthy. But there is something about like, all right, a girl would be cool, right?
Right. Yeah.
My fiance has a niece who has a daughter who's too, and,
Okay,
and
okay.
I spoil the shit out of that girl when
exactly,
I see her. It's just like, hey, yeah.
That's just how it is, man. That's just how it is.
Well, look, Desmond, this has been great. Congratulations on all the success. You're one of my favorite young founders in town. I'm definitely pulling for you and hoping to invest soon. Maybe by the time this is published, we'll be able to announce that.
Yeah. Hopefully.
All right, brother. Take care, man.
And pleasure.
All right. Cheers.
Mm-hmm.